When I was 12 years old, my grandfather gave me a small checkbook and said something strange. Never lose this. One day, it will change your life. But I was a child, and I lost it. A few weeks later, my grandfather died, and with him, the secret of that checkbook. For 23 years, I lived in extreme poverty, struggling to feed my 2 kids. Until one rainy afternoon, I found that same checkbook hidden in my attic. The next day I went to the bank. And when the manager checked the account balance, he looked at me in shock and said, "Ma'am, are you aware that this account contains $50 million? In that moment, my entire life changed forever. I was 12 years old when my grandfather called me into his small wooden room. He lived in a very old house at the edge of our village. The walls smelled like old books and dust, and sunlight came through the cracked window like thin golden lines. "Come here, my child," he said softly. I walked toward him slowly. My grandfather was very weak. His hands were shaking slightly, and his breathing was slow. He held something in his hand. A small brown checkbook. "Take this," he said. I looked at it, confused. "A checkbook?" I asked. He smiled faintly. "Yes. Keep it safe. No matter what happens, never throw it away." I frowned. "But why?" He leaned closer and whispered. "One day, this will change your life." I laughed a little. I was only 12. I didn't understand money, banks, or anything like that. To me, it looked like an ordinary old notebook. "Just promise me you will keep it safe," he said again. "I promise," I replied. He placed the checkbook into my hands and gently closed my fingers around it. That was the last real conversation we ever had. 2 weeks later, my grandfather passed away. Life became very hard after that. My father had already died years earlier, and my mother struggled to feed us. We were extremely poor. Sometimes we had food. Sometimes we didn't. Our house had a leaking roof, broken doors, and winter nights felt like ice inside the walls. As years passed, life pushed me into survival mode. School ended early for me. At 16, I started working in houses, washing dishes, cleaning floors, doing laundry. By 18, I had completely forgotten about the checkbook. I thought it was somewhere in an old box. But one day, when I looked for it, it was gone. I searched everywhere. Under the bed. Inside drawers. Old bags. Boxes. But it had disappeared. I cried that day. Not because I knew it was valuable. But because it was the last thing my grandfather gave me. And I lost it. Years passed. Life continued to be cruel. At 22, I got married. My husband was a simple man. Not rich, not powerful. Just a hardworking person who did small labor jobs. We loved each other, but love doesn't fill empty stomachs. Sometimes we had to choose between paying rent or buying food. Sometimes we had to borrow money from neighbors. Then our first child was born. A daughter. Holding her in my arms, I promised myself one thing. My children will never suffer the way I did. But reality is harsh. 2 years later, our second child was born. A son. Now we were 4 people living in a tiny rented house. My husband worked long hours, but the money was never enough. Electricity bills. School supplies. Food. Medicine. Every day felt like climbing a mountain with broken legs. Sometimes at night, I would cry quietly so my children wouldn't see. I often thought about my grandfather. And that lost checkbook. I wondered why he gave it to me. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was just an old memory. Years turned into decades. I turned 35 years old. Life was still difficult, but we survived. Then one ordinary afternoon, something strange happened. It was a rainy day. Our roof started leaking again, so I climbed up to the attic to move some old boxes. The attic was full of dust and forgotten things. Broken chairs. Old clothes. Rusty tools. While moving a heavy wooden box, something fell behind it. A small brown object. I picked it up. At first, I didn't recognize it. But then my heart suddenly started beating faster. My hands began shaking. "No way," I whispered. It was the checkbook. The exact same one my grandfather gave me 23 years ago. I stared at it in disbelief. How is this possible? I opened it slowly. Inside were several unused checks. And a bank name printed on the front. But something else caught my eye. An account number. My heart was racing now. What if? I ran downstairs immediately. My husband looked confused. "What happened?" he asked. I showed him the checkbook. "My grandfather gave me this when I was 12. I just found it." He looked curious. "So? I think there might be money in the account." He laughed gently. "Maybe a few dollars." But something inside me told me. This wasn't ordinary. The next morning, we decided to go to the bank. Neither of us expected what would happen next. The bank building looked huge and intimidating. My hands were sweating as I held the checkbook. "What if there's nothing?" I whispered. My husband squeezed my hand. Even if there isn't, at least we tried. We walked inside. The bank smelled like polished floors and air conditioning, something very different from our simple life. A receptionist greeted us. "How can I help you?" I nervously placed the checkbook on the desk. "I want to check this account." She looked at it and typed something into her computer. Then her expression changed. "Please wait a moment," she said. She stood up and walked into another office. A few minutes later, a bank manager came out. "Ma'am, could you please come with me?" My heart started pounding. My husband and I followed him into a private office. He sat down and looked at the checkbook carefully. "Where did you get this?" he asked politely. "My grandfather gave it to me many years ago." He nodded slowly. Then he typed the account number into his computer. For a few seconds, he said nothing. His eyes widened. He checked again. Then again. Finally, he looked at us. "Ma'am, are you aware of the balance in this account?" I shook my head. "No." He turned the screen toward us. And said something I will never forget. "This account currently holds." He paused. $50 million. For a moment, the room felt completely silent. I thought I heard wrong. My husband blinked several times. "Did you say 50,000? he asked. The manager shook his head. "No." He repeated slowly. $50 million. My body went numb. I felt dizzy. 50 a million? Tears started filling my eyes. All the years of poverty. All the nights without food. All the struggles. And this money had been sitting in a bank the whole time. My husband covered his mouth in shock. How is that possible?" The manager explained. "Your grandfather opened this account many years ago. The money has been growing with investments and interest." I started crying. Not quietly, but deeply. Because in that moment, I realized something powerful. My grandfather never forgot me. Even after death? He protected my future. The manager continued. "Since the account holder listed you as the beneficiary, the money legally belongs to you." My husband looked at me with tears in his eyes. "We're not poor anymore." I laughed and cried at the same time. For the first time in my life, I felt safe. Months later, our life changed completely. We bought a comfortable home. Our children now go to the best schools. My husband started his own business. But the most important thing we did was help others. Because I never forgot what poverty feels like. Every month, we donate money to poor families. We help children go to school. We support people who are struggling like we once did. And sometimes, when I sit quietly at night, I hold that old checkbook again. And I whisper, "Thank you, Grandpa." Because even though he left this world, his love saved our lives. Stories like this remind us that life can change in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes hope hides in places we forgot to look. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to subscribe to Revenge_Ida 2.0 for more shocking and emotional stories. And remember, sometimes the smallest object can hold the biggest miracle.